Hey guys, and welcome back to the Fantasy Table brought to you by the Blue Stable. My name is Luke Verkamp. I am once again your host. Unfortunately, due to the holidays and scheduling that's going on, Austin could not join me tonight, so I will be by myself. And it will be a bit of a shorter episode today because of the holidays. I am also pretty busy myself. And also, this is very hot. I am trying to be a little bit festive today with the holidays coming up, but hey, gotta do what you gotta do. But anyway, today I want to talk little bit more about the COVID situation that's going on around the league. I know it's COVID, not a lot of people want to talk about it, but with how it's been going through the players and through the NFL teams, you kind of have to talk about it for fantasy wise, because there have been a lot of bigger name players that have been getting put on the list. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about more NFL news and notes. I'm going to go over some waiver wire ads because waiver wire is very important this time of year during the fantasy playoffs. And while they won't be my starts of the week because I haven't had much time to do the full research on them, I'm going to give you some players that I think you should start, that they have good matchups, and I think they're in a good position to succeed for their next game. So we'll get started off talking about the whole COVID situation. It's still spreading like crazy throughout the league. I'm actually going as the Tuesday night games are going on. And I know like Tyler Lockett and Alex Collins, neither one of them was activated off the COVID list. Some of them did get activated off the COVID list, like Odell, he's playing tonight and stuff like that. So let me see if Odell actually has anything yet, because right now it's 3-0 Rams. And most likely whenever you're watching this, you know it's going to be a different score. But yeah, Odell, he has one catch for 7 yards. So it's not much, but it's something more than you would get if he was on the COVID list. But anyway, this week, the COVID's been spreading throughout the league. Some teams that have been affected by it have been the Bills, the Packers, the Chiefs, and the Patriots. The Bills, I know for sure that Cole Beasley has been placed on the COVID list. So he's unvaccinated, so he will for sure miss the next 10 days. And the Packers, I know I saw Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He is missing this next game. Or it's not confirmed yet, but most likely he'll miss this next game. And then the big one with the Chiefs, I know Tyreek Hill is for sure on the COVID list. I know I saw earlier in the day that Travis Kelce was also on the COVID list. I don't know if he still is or not. I've heard conflicting reports. And then the last one is Austin Eckler. First, he was supposed to be put on the COVID list, and then they said no, he just wasn't practicing due to something else. So, okay, his last thing for Austin Eckler was that he is not on the COVID list. So that's good. Hopefully he stays off the COVID list because he is very much needed. And yeah, so with COVID, the NFL kind of changes protocols with the COVID list, making it a little bit easier for you to return off the COVID list. So you still have to pay a lot of attention to see who is on the COVID list and who is not. If they are on the COVID list, obviously you got to take them out and you got to prepare for the next man up. But you really need to go into the weekend having backup plans, because these guys can be put on the COVID list in an instant and you would have no idea. I don't think there's a really good recommendation around it because you don't know who's going to get put on the COVID list when. It could happen to anyone. It could happen to your best star on your team. Like Jonathan Taylor, he could be on the COVID list tomorrow, and we had no idea. But you don't know that. So it's something that you just need to keep an eye on and try to adjust as the week goes along. But you just need to make sure you have backups. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this whole situation because it's just kind of crazy that it spiked up so much during the fantasy playoffs. But honestly, if you won the fantasy championship, it's most likely because you got lucky with your players not being on the COVID list. Simple as that, because like I know a lot of people, they've had to bench their best players because they got put on the COVID list. and they ended up losing the first round of the playoffs. So it's one of those things. It's a win-lose depending which side you're on. But now moving on to the news and notes. Sterling Shepard torn his Achilles, and he will be out the rest of the year, obviously. This is unfortunate because he started off the season great. He was like the wide receiver. I know he's in the top 10 of wide receivers in the first 4 weeks. And he's just been battling injuries since, and now he's torn his Achilles, which makes him for sure out. It's so unfortunate because I really like him as a player. He's got talent, but unfortunately, his stock is going down in both redraft and dynasty. So, yeah, it's unfortunate for him, but he is out the rest of the season. The Bills reportedly trust, I say trust because they don't really have anyone else to go to, Singletary as their number one running back for the team. Now, this is mainly because Zach Moss is obviously just not the guy, and Matt Breida fumbles the ball. So they have nobody else really to turn to but Devin Singletary. He's talented, but he's more of a third down back, a receiving down back. I don't think this will last into next season, but I mean, as long as he's getting the workload this season, he's still a decent play. Detroit signs that Craig Reynolds to the active roster. I know we talked about Craig Reynolds a little bit last week. Me and Mason was. But yeah, now he's on the official roster because he just torched the Arizona defense for over 100 yards, which is pretty crazy whenever you think about how unknown Craig Reynolds was just a few weeks ago, and now he's tearing up the number one team's defense for over 100 yards just a couple weeks later. Now the big ones was the biggest news out of any of the games this weekend was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. Chris Godwin, he tore his ACL, which sucks because he was on the franchise tag. So he will be going into free agency this next year, going to have to take a pay decrease because he's going to for sure miss the start of the season. I don't see how he could, barring a miraculous comeback from this ACL injury, he's most likely going to be missing the first couple months of the season. But Dynasty, I don't know what to say about his stock because it's definitely lower than what it was last week. But he's still a very talented player, still somebody that I would like on my fantasy team, but somebody that's going to be maybe a value next season during redrafts. But we'll see about that situation. And also in that same game, Mike Evans strained his hamstring. So he still has a chance to play this next week, but he's kind of a week-to-week player right now. I wouldn't project him to be playing this week. I would be acting as if he's not going to be playing this week. So, yeah, try to look for a replacement for him if you have him. But most likely, I would say that he doesn't play. Leonard Fournette, he got actually put on IR. Well, not officially put on IR, but most likely he'll be put on IR for his hamstring injury, which would end his regular season, but he could come back for the playoffs. Bruce Arians said that it's Ronald Jones' job right now, just kind of how whenever Ronald Jones got injured last year and playoff Lenny took over, it's going to be the opposite way around. They're hoping that Ronald Jones can take over. But they also signed Le'Veon Bell to their practice squad pending his physical. And if the physical passed, they'll most likely bring him to the active roster even. Drew Lock is most likely going to be starting this Sunday with Teddy Bridgewater out with the concussion. Hopefully Teddy Bridgewater is okay. I didn't see the play on what happened, but I know that Teddy got taken out on a cart, which is never good. I don't like seeing that. I don't like players getting hurt that bad like that. And Daniel Jones is going to be shut down the remainder of the season, which is probably good for him because the Giants team really isn't that great this year. And it's kind of just a lost year with Saquon being out so often, Daniel Jones being out so often. Just take the high up pick and move on. A.J. Brown is expected to return from IR. This is pretty big because Julio has been battling injuries like crazy with that hamstring. If he plays and he does pretty well, he's going to be their top option and the guy to have in Tennessee. While they aren't really that good right now with Derrick Henry out, they haven't been terrible, but not really an offense I'm wanting to target, but still A.J. Brown's very talented. Still a guy that I would want to see a game out of first before I put him in my starting lineup. But yeah, he's coming back, which is pretty big for the Titans. Joe Mixon had an ankle sprain. I haven't heard any updates on the timetable if he's going to miss this next week or not. So we'll have to keep updated on how that goes for him. Elijah Mitchell took a positive turn and will be a game time decision this Thursday night. If he is out again, then it's probably going to be a Jeff Wilson show again. But if he returns, I really don't know what Kyle Shanahan is going to do because he plays running backs very sporadically. He likes to play the hot hand, so I wouldn't be surprised if even if Elijah Mitchell is back, that Jeff Wilson will get a big workload. Now, big one, J.D. McKissick got put on the IR. This is actually a huge bump for Antonio Gibson, even though I just heard that he got a toe injury in the Tuesday night game. So while I'm trying to keep an eye on it because I have him in a couple leagues, I just saw that he's been questionable to return. So I don't know if he is seriously hurt or not. We'll just have to keep an update on that as the week goes along. And yeah, that's a bit it. That's it for the news and notes. Moving on to the waivers, though, there's actually quite a few good options this week. Starting off with Ronald Jones. I mean, you got to pick up Ronald Jones just because he's going to be a starting running back on a very good offense. While the offense probably will hurt a bit with Fournette, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin most likely all out, Ronald Jones is going to be a starter, and he's going to get probably quite a bit of the workload. While I personally wouldn't want to start him this next week, he's still, just based on volume, he'd probably be a good play yet. First of all, let me see who they play this next week before I make any judgment. They're playing Carolina, which that's not really good defense to go against for running backs. Yeah, I would try to not play him if I could. Try to find someone else. Duke Johnson, he is only owned in 2% of leagues. Yeah, he did really well, even though Myles Gaskin was playing as well this past week. I know Philip Lindsay got activated as well, so I don't know how they're really going to deal with all these running backs. But they're playing the Saints, which is also not a great matchup for running backs, but definitely a guy that you could hold on to on your bench just in case he is the lead guy and he is going to get a majority of the workload. Because this late into the year, you just need starting running backs, as many as you can. And the last running back that I'm going to talk about today is Justin Jackson. He is only owned in 10% of leagues, but with Austin Eckler nursing a injury, and he played pretty well this past week, he's definitely worth an ad. So I pick him up just in case Austin Eckler does miss. He would get a lot of the workload. And that is a really good offense with Justin Herbert there. So yeah, now moving on to wide receivers. The first thing I want to say is check to see if Antonio Brown got dropped. I know I dropped him myself because I needed another bench spot filled. And unfortunately, because he was suspended and not injured, I couldn't put him in my IR spot. So I had to drop him. But now because he was suspended and the Buccaneers are kind of like, well, he might not play the rest of the season just because he messed up type deal. But now with Chris Godwin being out and Mike Evans probably being out, they kind of need him. So he is probably going to be their top wide receiver, and he will probably be a steal if you can get him off of waivers. Tom Brady obviously trusts him, as we saw earlier in the season whenever he was doing very well. But yeah, definitely check to see if he's out there. If he is, grab him. That'd be, even above Ronald Jones, I would say I'd probably take Antonio Brown over him. Next up is Russell Gage. Also make sure to see if he is available in your league. He's only owned in 54% of leagues. While it is over half, I still want to say go check to see if he's out there. He's been really good lately. He's had, let me see what his targets have been in the past few weeks. Yeah, he's had 8 targets, 7 targets, 12 targets, 6 targets, 11 targets. He's had a very good target share in his offense. This past week, he had 91 yards and a touchdown. So he plays Detroit this next week as well. So it's like pretty good option to pick up and play if you needed to. But moving on to lower owned wide receivers, first one that I would pick up is Amon-Ra St. Brown. He has been playing very well these past couple weeks. He's been the top target there. He's only owned in 35% of the leagues, so I'd pick up the rookie just because of the target share that he is getting. Obviously, it seems like Jared Goff has trusted him, even though Jared Goff is on the COVID list. He's still probably their most talented wide receiver on that team. I'd pick him up. And if you really needed to, you could start him. And the final wide receiver I want to talk about is Gabe Davis. I know that Emmanuel Sanders got put on the COVID list. Or not Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley. He's on the COVID list. And Emmanuel Sanders is, I believe, is he still on the list or is he injured? We'll find out. Yeah, he has a knee injury, so he was for sure out this past week. We're still unknown about this next week, but if Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley are both out, then Gabe Davis could be a smash play for you this next week. And finally, while they aren't my quote-unquote starts of the week, these are some guys that I would play. Joe Burrow, I feel like he's got a plethora of receiving talent, and if Joe Mixon's going to be out, then he's going to want to throw more. They're playing, let me look it up, they're playing Baltimore, which Baltimore has been pretty susceptible to quarterbacks this season, giving up the 7th most points to quarterbacks this season. I was going to say pretty good the last 4 weeks, but a little bit lower the last 4 weeks, but still within the top half of the league. But yeah, he's been doing pretty well these past few weeks. Not great, but not terrible either. So I'd feel confident in starting him whenever he has T. Higgins and Jamar Chase playing alongside him. Next up, we have the Denver running backs. These both Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams are in play for me. I would start them both. While they have been splitting time, Javonte has definitely been the better running back of the two. They're playing the Las Vegas Raiders this week. The Raiders, they give up a good amount of points to the running back position. They actually give up the second most points to running back position the last 4 weeks, and they're third most on the season overall. So I'd be fine with starting both. I think that Gordon will probably get the touchdown, but Javonte will get more of the yards. But especially with Drew Lock most likely starting, that might mean more work for the running backs. And that's what hurts the Raiders the most, so I'd be comfortable starting both. As for my wide receiver, I would start Antonio Brown. Like I was talking about earlier, Tom Brady, he's missing both Evans and Godwin most likely this next week. So Antonio Brown will be a smash play if that is the case. And he is fully healthy. I hope he's fully healthy if he's coming back. I'm not sure if he is or not, but if he is, then yeah, Antonio Brown should be a smash play. Also, Gronk, if you have Gronk, he is a smash play with both of those guys out. But my start of the week for tight end is Zach Ertz. As a Colts fan, I know what the weakness is, and it's passing to tight ends. As we saw with Gronk a few weeks ago, he had over 100 yards. you just can't, like, the Colts, they've been better against wide receivers this year. Their cornerbacks have stepped up, but the Colts are still giving up the third most points to tight ends this year. So I'd be comfortable starting Zach Ertz, because if the Cardinals are going to be playing hard against us, Zach Ertz is going to be the guy that they're going to be thrown to the most, especially with DeAndre Hopkins out. Most likely I see this game being a back and forth, but with Jonathan Taylor running the ball so well and Arizona's run defense not being that great, I think that the Colts could get an early lead, which means that Arizona is going to need to be passing more, which means more targets to Zach Ertz. So I really like him as a play this week. I would take his over yards. I don't know what it's at right now, but that's probably a good play if you are into betting. But yeah, that is about all I have for you today. Unfortunately, this is not as long of an episode as I would like. I wish I could have done more research for you guys, but unfortunately, holiday season, I am busy just as much as most of the people watching this are busy. So I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays, Happy New Year's. Whatever you guys celebrate, I hope you guys enjoy it. Hopefully you survived the first week of the fantasy playoffs, because it was awful. I actually looked up a stat and I saw that the Sunday of this past week that I think there was 40 touchdowns scored, which is like the lowest since like 1970 something, which is absolutely absurd. So it was just an awful week for fantasy, like with the COVID list going on, with the low scoring games, everything. So I hope you survived that. If you did, congratulations. But this week doesn't look to be any better. It looks like there's going to still be a lot more COVID situation going on. So just all I can say is just try to be aware of what's going on and try to plan ahead as much as you can. I know everybody's busy during this time of year, so do what you can. Unfortunately, most likely what's going to happen is whoever wins your fantasy championship is just going to be the healthiest team who has the least amount of COVID players on their team. But yeah, that's about all I can tell for you. That's about all I have for you today. I hope you guys have safe travels to wherever you're going this holiday season. Have a Merry Christmas once again. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you next week, but I'm not sure with all the holiday schedule going on. I may not be able to, and Austin may not be able to. But if we don't, have a Happy New Year as well, and we'll see you in 2022. But yeah, this has been Luke. Have a good day.